Two versions of You Start Today. Same $500 a month, same two funds, same market, same average return. One of them is 30, one of them is 40. Same everything, except the calendar. Stick around for what 10 years is actually worth. Version 1. You're a third-grade teacher, 30 years old. $500 a month starts leaving your account automatically the day after every paycheck. You fill the same green thermos with home coffee every morning instead of buying it, mostly out of habit at this point, not really about the money anymore. At 33, 3 years in, the total is $19,300. You've put in $18,000 of your own. It doesn't feel like much of anything yet, just a number that's slightly bigger than the last number. That same year, you get married. Your spouse asks, reasonably, whether the $500 a month should pause for a while to help cover the wedding. You run the numbers instead, find $500 elsewhere in the budget for 4 months, and never miss a contribution. It's a small decision at the time. It doesn't feel small in hindsight. At 35, the market drops for 2 straight months. You watch the balance shrink by 4 figures in a single week and feel a version of panic you weren't expecting, given how small the actual dollar amount was in the grand scheme of things. You don't touch it. You don't even open the app for the back half of that month, on purpose, because you already know exactly what you'd want to do if you looked. At 38, 8 years in, it's $61,500. A colleague your age, who started around the same time you did but pulled everything into cash during a rough patch 2 years ago, mentions offhand that she just never got back into it. You don't say anything. There's nothing useful to say to that. At 40, 10 years in, it's $82,900. You notice the number without much ceremony, waiting for your car to get an oil change, and go back to scrolling something else within about a minute. 10 years used to feel like a long time to wait for a number. It doesn't anymore. At 45, 15 years in, it's $151,000. You've stopped checking it monthly. Quarterly feels like plenty. A former student's parent, now a peer at a school function, asks what you do for retirement savings, half making conversation. You tell them the truth. $500 a month, 2 funds, 15 years now. And they seem almost let down by how unremarkable the answer is. At 50, 20 years in, it's $246,000. You do the math on how much of that is your own money versus the market's contribution for the first time in years, out of curiosity more than anything, and you're a little surprised the market share has finally pulled ahead of yours. At 55, 25 years in, it's $379,000. Hold on to that exact number. It's going to matter in a minute. Version 2, same person, different fork. This time you don't start at 30. Life gets in the way. A spouse's medical debt eats your extra income through your early 30s. Then 2 kids arrive back to back. Then a few years just disappear the way years with small children do. You mean to start investing the whole time. Meaning to isn't the same as doing it. At 37, you finally have $500 a month of breathing room again, and you spend most of a weekend reading about whether it's even worth starting this late. You do the math a few different ways, trying to talk yourself out of feeling behind. It half works. You almost don't start at all, honestly. There's a version of that weekend where you close the tab, decide it's not worth the trouble at this point, and go back to just getting by month to month like you have for a decade. You don't know exactly why you didn't. Something about the math refusing to fully talk you out of it, even on your worst attempts to be talked out of it. At 40, you finally do it. Same $500 a month, same 2 funds, same green thermos, same everything, just starting a full decade later than the other version of you did. At 43, 3 years in, the total is $19,300. Identical to where version 1 stood at 33. Same years invested, same math, same result. The calendar hasn't caught up to the difference yet. At 45, 5 years in, it's $34,500. You catch yourself briefly comparing this number to nothing in particular because there's no earlier version of your own timeline to measure it against. Comparing to version 1 would just be depressing, so mostly you don't. At 50, 10 years in, it's $82,900. You mention the number to your spouse over dinner, quietly proud of it, and get a genuine "that's actually a lot" in response, which lands harder than you expected it to. It's the first time in a decade the number has felt like something instead of a line item. At 55, 15 years in, it's $151,000. The exact number version 1 hit at 45. You're a decade behind on the calendar and exactly on pace with the math. That part hasn't changed. At 60, 20 years in, it's $246,000. Again, exactly matching version 1's number from a decade earlier in the calendar. At 50, the pattern holds the entire way through. Every checkpoint you hit, version 1 already stood on, exactly 10 years before you got there. Here's where it stops being a wash. At 65, version 1, the one who started at 30, has been investing for 35 years. The total, $829,000. At 65, version 2, the one who started at 40, has been investing for 25 years. The total, $379,000. Same $500 a month the entire time in both versions. Same market, same discipline, arguably. Version 2 never missed a contribution either, once they finally started. The only variable that changed was 10 years, and 10 years turned out to be worth $450,000. Break that gap down and it gets more interesting, not less. Version 1 only put in $60,000 more of their own money across those extra 10 years. That's just $500 a month, 10 more times over. The other $390,000 of the gap didn't come from either version working harder, earning more, or picking better funds. It came from nothing but time, compounding on money that was already sitting there. Put another way, for every extra dollar version 1 contributed during those 10 Head Start years, they ended up with roughly $6.50 more at 65. Not because that dollar was invested any differently, because it simply had 35 years to work instead of 25. And the last 10 of those 35 are where an account this size grows the fastest in raw dollar terms, even though the percentage return never changes. Here's the detail that actually matters most though, and it's easy to miss if you're only looking at the age 65 numbers. At 55, version 1 already has $379,000. The exact total version 2 needs an entire additional decade of contributions to finally reach at 65. Version 1 gets to that same number 10 years earlier, and then gets 10 more years for it to keep growing on top of that. That's the whole mechanism of this entire video, sitting right there in one coincidence of the math. Run the two accounts forward one more decade past that, to 75, if either version keeps contributing. Version 1 is sitting past $1.7 million. Version 2, having started 10 years behind, is only just now crossing $800,000, roughly where version 1 already was at 65. The gap doesn't close as both accounts keep growing. If anything, it gets a little wider every single year, because 7% of a bigger number is always a bigger number. None of this means version 2 failed at anything. The medical debt was real. The kids were real. 10 years of meaning to is an extremely normal decade, and plenty of people never even get to the starting at 40 part at all. Worth saying plainly, those 10 years weren't wasted, even if this video makes them look that way when you only look at one account balance. Version 2 spent that decade paying down debt that would have compounded against them just as relentlessly as an index fund compounds for them now, just in the opposite direction. Raising two kids through their hardest years is not a rounding error in a life, even if it doesn't show up anywhere on this particular chart. The $450,000 gap is real. It's also not the only ledger either version was keeping during those 10 years. It also doesn't mean version 2 is somehow stuck at $379,000 forever. That number keeps compounding too, same as version 1's does. It just started its climb a decade later. On a 10-year handicap it can manage but never fully erase. Not through effort, not through catching up the contribution amount, not through anything except the one input nobody can go back and add more of. There's a version 3 worth mentioning, briefly. Even though it isn't either of the two this video is actually about. The version who's 40 right now, watching this, who hasn't started at all yet. For that version, the choice was never actually 30 versus 41, or 40 versus whatever age it is when this video finally stops feeling theoretical. The math doesn't care which version you are. It only cares what today's date turns out to be. There's a version 4 too, worth exactly one sentence. The person who's 25 right now, who has 15 years before this comparison even applies to them, and who just watched an entire video about how much 10 years is worth without doing anything about the 15 they still have sitting right in front of them. That's the part worth sitting with, whichever version you actually are right now. The $500 a month is the easy part, a decision made once, automated, mostly boring after that. The 10 years are the part you can't purchase back once they've already gone by doing something else. Two versions of you started today, or 10 years ago, or maybe 10 years from now, depending on which one you happen to be. Same $500, same thermos, same everything else about the life in between. The only real question this video was ever actually asking is which version gets to say that today was the day they started.